In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Okay, God willing, today we're going to finish the book of First Maccabees. So First Maccabees is 16 chapters. Today we're going to study chapters 14, 15, and 16. God willing, we'll get through the whole thing. So where we left off, so first of all, who is the first time here or haven't been here for a while? So let me give a kind of, again, a synopsis of what we've been studying of the book of First Maccabees. This book is called a deuterocanonical book. It's not found in the modern English translations of the Bible, but it was present in the original Hebrew text and in the Greek translation. But was removed later on by those who translated the Bible from Greek to English in the Protestant Church. But it's present in the Orthodox Study Bible. It takes place from 100 to 200 years before Christ, which is in the period between what we traditionally call the Old Testament, ending in the Book of Malachi, and the New Testament, starting in the Book of Matthew. This book would be historically somewhere in between there. And it speaks about the Seleucid Empire, which is a Greek empire that is coming to take over Israel and essentially assimilating them, transforming their culture, their religion to be Greek, and then the resistance that happened from Israel to stop this Hellenization from happening, led by the family of the Maccabees, which started out with a man whose name was Matthias. Later on, his son Judas became the leader, and then after that, his brother Jonathan, and then after that, his brother Simon. And so right now in the book, we've read about many different things that have happened, and many wars and politics and kings and overthrowing of kings back and forth. And so we're now at the point in the book where Simon, who is the brother of Judas, Simon Maccabees, he is the leader of the nation. And right now there is a period of relative peace where Israel is a sovereign nation. It's respected for the most part, even though there could still be battles, but it's definitely come a very long way from where it began. And there's a period of peace now where essentially Simon, at the end of chapter 13, which is what we studied last time, essentially Simon was expelling out of Israel all the remaining strongholds of the Greeks that were still there, and now they're being expelled, and he's showing them mercy. So instead of killing them, he's essentially letting them go back to their homes. Okay, and so he's purified the temple. He's done everything to kind of restore worship, restore the nation of Israel to how it's supposed to be. Okay, so now we're going to continue reading in the last three chapters and see what happens. Okay. In the 172nd year, King Demetrius gathered together his army, and he went into Media to obtain auxiliaries to fight against Trypho. So Trypho, remember, he was originally the friend of Antiochus, who was one of the kings, and then took over the kingdom later on. And Demetrius is another man who his line of kings are always also fighting for this throne. So the main names here you keep finding over is Demetrius, which refers to several people. Okay. So there's been more than one Demetrius. And Antiochus, which is another line of kings, which there's more than one Antiochus, okay? And also there was an Alexander in there as the sons. Also Trypho is another name you hear, who was a person who was a friend of Antiochus that took over the kingdom, okay? So those are like some of the main players. We also have the other players is the Romans, okay? And last time we talked about the Spartans, which I incorrectly said were part of the Romans. They're actually the Greeks. Okay, so we've talked about the Romans, we've talked about the Spartans, we've talked about Antiochus and his line, we've talked about Demetrius and his line, and we've talked about Trypho, and then the Maccabee line as well. So these are all like the major families in play in the book of Maccabees. Okay, so now King Demetrius here is wanting to fight against Trypho. Okay, and so he's going to get auxiliaries, meaning he's going to get additional help, additional army soldiers in order to come and to fight against him. Okay. And Arsaces, the king of Persia and Media, heard that Demetrius entered his confines, and so he sent one of his princes to capture him alive and to bring him to him. This is the first time we hear now about this kingdom, the Persians, okay? So essentially Demetrius going to the Persian, trying to get some military assistance. The king of Persia realizes that Demetrius is in his region, and so he captures him. And he went out and struck the camp of Demetrius, and captured him, and brought him to Arsaces, and placed him under guard. The entire land of Judah was quiet during all the days of Simon. So now we're switching gears, okay? And he sought what was good for his people, and his power and his glory pleased them through all his days. So again, Simon is the Simon Maccabees. He is right now the ruler and the high priest of Israel. And like I said earlier, it's a period of peace. And with all his glory, he accepted Joppa as a port, and he made it an entrance to the islands of the sea. And he enlarged the boundaries of his nation, and he controlled the countryside. And he gathered together many captives, and he was the ruler of Gazara and Bethzer and the stronghold, and he took uncleanness away from it, and there was no one who could withstand him. So when it says he took uncleanness away, essentially these places, okay, who are originally like part of Israel, had been defiled by the presence of the Gentiles. So whenever he is like taking the Gentiles, he's kicking them out of these areas, and he's cleansing these areas to restore their cleanness, because according to God's commandment, being in the presence of the Gentiles or touching them is defilement for them. And each one cultivated his land in peace, and the land of Judah produced its fruits, and the trees of the fields their fruit. All the elders sat in the streets, and they discussed what was good for the country, and the youths clothed themselves in glory and in the robes of war. Okay? So what kind of like image do you have of this at this point? Like when you read this, like what image does that conjure?
Peace.
Peace, right? It's like before everything was just talking about war and mobilizing for war and this person going against that. Now you start reading about like the people are living, it's like they're sitting in the streets. Like you imagine these elders are sitting in the streets and they're just enjoying their time. They're talking about their nation. They're talking about what's good for the country. Even the youths also are like dressed in a good way. They have supplies, they have food, they have clothing, right? And so they're enjoying themselves, like they're flourishing, right? They're not just surviving, which is, you could say all the previous chapters Israel is just trying to survive. Now you can say Israel is actually flourishing. And he gave tributes of provisions to the cities, and he decreed that they would have equipment for fortification, so that the fame of his glory was renowned even to the ends of the earth. So all of the cities were given money, okay, by Simon to be prepared for any future war that might come, so they would be protected and fortified in case there's any further conflict.
What did you say?
Yes.
Glory, is it glory to gods or glory to their king?
His glory, the Simon's glory,
Simon, not
like his fame, and kind of like Solomon. He was a very famous king, and he was very glorious. He was well known. So I was saying Simon is well known and is famous because he is the one who reigned over this peaceful time of Israel, where all the Gentiles had been expelled, and it was a time of peace.
Okay.
Yeah. He caused there to be peace over the land, and Israel was rejoicing with great joy, and each one sat under his vine and under his fig tree, and there was no one who would terrify them. Again, the same image is like everyone's kind of, sitting around, kind of, relaxing and resting without any kind of imminent threat. There was nothing left of those who might fight against them in the land. Kings had been crushed in those days. And he confirmed all the humble of his people, and he sought the law, and he took away every iniquity and evil. He glorified the sanctuary, and he multiplied the vessels of the holy places. So this description of him as the ruler, Simon, okay, now even though Simon wasn't technically a king, he was the high priest, but he was the leader of the people. And if you read this description of him and everything that he did, he is enforcing and supporting and confirming and establishing the worship of the temple, the worship of gods. Compare him to many other the kings that came long before him in the history of Israel, who promoted idol worship and promoted all kinds of wrong practices and sinful practices and not following the law. So like even we can compare this period of time, not just in the recent history of Israel, but in even the far distant history that happened over 1,000 years ago. This could be one of the most golden eras of peace in Israel. Not just external peace because they don't have enemies fighting them, but even internal peace because they are reconciled here with God. Like they're doing, as a nation, they are doing what God wants them to do. Okay. And so it was heard at Rome and even in Sparta that Jonathan had passed away. So remember, Jonathan, he was killed, okay? And so he was very well known. And they were very sorrowful. So all these nations, okay, that Jonathan had made peace with, they heard that he had been killed. But when they heard that Simon his brother had been made high priest in his place, and that he obtained the entire country and the cities in it, they wrote to him on tablets of brass, so as to renew the friendship and alliance which they had made with Judas and with Jonathan his brothers. Right, so there was the initial time where Judas was the leader. He is the one who first reached out to Rome, okay, and made peace with them. And then, in the time of Jonathan, Jonathan sent ambassadors to re-establish the peace with them. And now, a third time with Simon, their brother, they are again re-emphasizing and re-establishing peace, renewing the peace. So they're maintaining this, this friendship, this alliance with Israel all throughout. And they were read in the sight of the assembly at Jerusalem. And this is a copy the letters that the Spartans sent. Okay, so the Spartans here are the Greeks. They're sending this letter to to Israel, emphasizing their relationship with them. And this is what it said: the leaders in the cities of the Spartans, to Simon, the great priest, and to the elders and the priests and the rest of the people of the Jews, their brothers, greetings. The ambassadors who were sent to our people have reported to us of your glory and honor and rejoicing, and we were glad at their arrival. And we wrote down what was said by them in the councils of the people as follows: Numenius, the son of Antiochus, and Antipater, the son of Jason, ambassadors of the Jews, came to us to renew the former friendship with us. He's describing something that happened in the past. And it pleased the people to receive the men gloriously, and to place a copy of their words in a section of the public books, so as to be a memorial for the people of the Spartans. Furthermore, we have written a copy of them to Simon the great priest. But after this, Simon sent Numenius to Rome. So again, this is the ambassador that was sent previously, right? And here he's sending him to Rome, in possession of a great shield of gold weighing over 1,000 pounds, to confirm the association with them. But when the people of Rome had heard these words, they said, with what deeds of thanksgiving shall we repay Simon and his sons? For he has vindicated his brothers, and he has fought off the enemies of Israel from them. And so they decreed him free, and they registered it on the tablets of brass, and placed it in an inscription on Mount Zion. And this is a copy of the writing. On the 18th day of the month of Elul, in the 172nd year, the third year under Simon, the great priest at Asaramel. Okay, so he's saying what this great priest at Asaramel, there's different opinions of what Asaramel means, okay, but it's essentially it's unknown. We're not sure what it means. Some people say that it's another name for Simon, okay, but it's not clear if this is a place or what. In a great convocation of the priests and the people and the leaders of the nation and the elders of the country, these things were noted. Now there have often been battles in our country, and Simon, the son of Matthias, of the sons of Jerib and his brothers, have put themselves in danger and have withstood the enemies of their nation, so as to establish their holy places and the law. And they have glorified their people with great glory. So he's essentially recounting history, right? Because the story of Maccabees starts at the very beginning with Matthias. Okay, this man Matthias was like the beginning of the resistance movement of the Maccabees. Okay, and now he's saying what Simon, referring him back to his father, because his father was well known, okay, have put themselves in danger, meaning they are the ones that have put themselves in danger fighting against the Greeks, fighting against the Seleucid Empire, the Ptolemy Empire, all of these, fighting against them in order to maintain their freedom and to maintain their worship. Okay, so he's acknowledging that they put themselves in danger and have withstood the enemies of their nation, all the enemies around them. Okay, so as to establish their holy places and the law. Again, all of this was being done not just for them to have political freedom, right? The whole purpose, the foundation of the resistance that Israel mounted against the Greeks was not simply because they wanted to be a free nation, but it was because they wanted the freedom to worship God. They wanted the freedom to obey God, and they felt like this was a great, blasphemy against God for them not to be able to follow the law of God as as they had been commanded, right? And so this was their motivation from the beginning. And this is why God granted them so much victory, because they were doing this for that purpose, right? They were not seeking gain for themselves. They were not seeking power for themselves. All they wanted was to be able to worship God. And Jonathan gathered together his nation, and he was made their great priest, and he was laid to rest among his people. And their enemies wanted to trample and lay waste to their country, and to extend their hands against their holy places. All of this is recounting the story. Then Simon resisted, and he fought for his nation, and he requested much money, and he armed the valiant men of his nation, and gave them wages. And he fortified the cities of Judea and Bethzer, which are along the borders of Judea, where the weaponry of the enemies was before. And he placed a garrison of Jewish men there. And he fortified Joppa, which is by the sea, and Gazara, which is on the border of Azotus, where the enemies stayed before, and he placed Jews there. And he positioned with them whatever was fitting for their preparation. So all of this is being written like to recount the history of what is it that has happened. And the people saw the acts of Simon and the glory that he intended to bring to his nation, and they made him their commander and first priest, because he had done all these things, and because of the justice and faith that he maintained for his nation, and because he sought to exalt his people by all means. Again, what was the source of honor that Simon received, right? It says what? The people saw the acts of Simon and the glory that he intended to bring to his nation, and that's why they made him commander. That's why they made him high priest, because he had done these things, and because of the justice and faith that he maintained for his nation. So he sought to exalt his people, right? So when we speak about leadership, sometimes people in leadership positions, they expect that people are going to follow them simply because they are in a leadership position. And anyone who's been in that position can sometimes be frustrated, like, someone who becomes like the boss, okay, in an office, or even like a coordinator of a Sunday school class, or any kind of leadership position, right? Sometimes you expect that other people are going to follow you simply because you have the position, you have the title, right? But in practice, that doesn't happen, right? In practice, people have to gain, you have to gain the trust of the people. They have to see that you have their best interests at heart, that you are willing to work hard, that you are wise, that you're making good decisions, right? All these things is what causes other people to trust us. So here, the reason that Simon was exalted the way he was, it says what? Because he sought to exalt his people, right? He didn't seek to exalt himself, which unfortunately a lot of times, this is what leaders do. Leaders take the power that they have received from the people and they seek to exalt themselves. They seek to abuse it. They seek to just gain from themselves for what has been given. And those leaders are very ill-respected, right? Even when they have supreme power, even when they're, extremely powerful, even when they're very talented. But if people don't see that they're using the power that they have for their own good, for the good of the people, they will not respect them. But here Simon was respected because his focus was to exalt the people, not to exalt himself. And even when he had the opportunity to gain power for himself or to gain additional land for himself, he didn't take this. It's not what he wanted. He wanted simply to be left alone to worship God and have his religious freedom. And in his days there was prosperity by his hands, so that the Gentiles were taken away from their country, and also those who were in the city of David in Jerusalem, in the stronghold, from which they went out and contaminated all the places that were around the sanctuary, and from which they brought a great scourging against chastity. So, right, he's talking about how Simon expunged out of Israel all of the remaining Gentiles that were contaminating and defiling the land. And he placed in it Jewish men as a means of protection for the region and the city, and he raised the walls of Jerusalem. Okay, so again, he's purging out. And King Demetrius confirmed him in the high priesthood. According to these things, he made him his friend, and he glorified him with great glory. So even politically, their enemies that ended up making peace with them glorified them. For he heard that the Romans had called the Jews their friends and associates and brothers, and they received the ambassadors of Simon with glory, and that the Jews and their priests had consented that he should be their governor and high priest unceasingly until there should arise a faithful prophet. Now see, this is interesting, okay? So historically in Israel, how were prophets chosen?
By God.
By God, right? In this case, that didn't happen. In this case, this family, the Maccabees, essentially they became the family of the high priest because they were the leaders, right? And there was really nobody else to There's really nobody else to take the part, right? But every other time, like think about, for instance, like Samuel the prophet, for instance, like he was chosen specifically by God, and he was operating as a prophet, right? Like he could God was speaking to him, and he would declare what God was saying to the people, right? The Maccabees didn't do that. I mean, the Maccabees, they didn't ever, like, God never spoke to them and they said, okay, listen, this is what God is saying. Okay, they were rulers, right? But they were not the traditional way that the high priest operated, right? So here they're essentially saying that he is the high priest for now, okay, until God should send a faithful prophet, in which case a new high priest would be chosen. And that he should be the commander over them, and that he should take care of the sanctuary, and that he should appoint 4 men over their works, and over the country, and over the weapons, and over the strongholds. And that he should take care of the holy places, and that he should be obeyed by all, and that all the records in the country should be recorded in his name, and that he should be clothed in purple and gold. Okay, why clothed in purple and gold?
As commanded in the Torah.
Well, because it's like the kingly, because he's like a king, purple. Okay.
But were the other prophets dressed in, like Samuel and...
Well, see, he had more than one role, right? Like traditionally, like in the past, you have your high priest and you have a king who's separate from him, and you had the prophet as well. In this case, you don't have the three. All you have is him. So he was kind of seen as being the ruler, and he was seen as being the priest. Okay.
The only one to be a king and a prophet, so it would be David, or probably Solomon too.
David. And that it should not be lawful for any of the people or the priest to make void any of these things, nor to contradict things that are said by him, nor to call together an assembly in the country without him, nor to be clothed in purple, nor to use a clasp of gold. So he's saying no one else can take that role. No one else can wear purple. No one else can wear gold, because he is the leader, and only he is, like, we're treating him in a special way to identify him as such. Okay, he is the only leader. And whoever will do otherwise, or who will make void any of these things, shall be guilty. And it pleased all the people to appoint Simon, and to act according to these words. And Simon accepted it, and he was pleased to perform the office of the high priesthood, and to be the commander and leader of the people of the Jews, and of the priests, and to be foremost over them all. Again, why is Simon agreeing to this? He's not agreeing to it because he wants power, right? He's agreeing to it because he feels like this is the right thing to do, the right responsibility for him to take, so he can continue his role as the protector of these people. And they asked that this writing be placed on tablets of brass, and be placed within the precinct of the sanctuary in a celebrated place, and that a copy of these be placed in the treasury, so that Simon and his sons may have it. Okay, this is chapter 14. Any questions before we move on?
So I'm looking at verse 27, and what does the month of Elul mean? It's spelled E-L-U-L. So what does that mean?
Okay, that's not verse 47. That's
No, I'm talking about 27.
27.
27, not 47.
The ones that you like.
Yeah, like what does it mean exactly? Does it mean something?
That's the name of the month back then, and it sounds like a lot in Arabic. That's
Because I know we don't say that month every year. I know that.
This was a month in their calendar, not.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So is there a meaning for it or not?
September. September. Yeah.
September.
No.
It's this one.
And also, I'm more abundant if you don't mind. So what does the name Matthias mean?
So, if it's the same as Matthias, it means gift from God. Yeah.
I thought it had because when I was looking at that name, I'm like, maybe it has a different meaning compared to Matthias.
I think it's essentially the same name.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, chapter 15. And King Antiochus, the son of Demetrius. Now see things, if it weren't already confusing with the names, Now it starts to get more confusing because Demetrius always had sons named Demetrius, and Antiochus had sons named Antiochus. And now you have Demetrius have a son named Antiochus. I don't know why they do this, but okay. So now Demetrius, okay, he is not in the picture. His son Antiochus, okay, and King Antiochus, the son of Demetrius, sent letters from the islands of the sea to Simon the priest and leader of the nation of the Jews, and to all the people. Okay.
Those translation I looked at it, so it calls this Antiochus the seventh.
Okay. Yeah. And these continued in this way. So, okay, just go back. Okay, so what's happening? King Antiochus, he's sending letters, okay, to Simon. Okay. Now remember, what happened to Demetrius' father?
He died.
He was captured by the Persians. Because remember, he went to Persia to get armies so he could fight Trypho. Okay? But he was captured there.
Are the Persians the same as the Arabs?
They are Arab.
The Arabs?
Yeah.
Because didn't he go to, it said Arabs earlier?
The Persians and the Medians. The Median.
Okay.
Yeah.
Persia is supposed to be Iran.
Yeah.
Supposed to be Iran.
But I think at the time, that whole area was considered the Arabs.
Okay.
Yeah. And these continued in this way. King Antiochus to Simon the great priest and to the people of the Jews, greetings. Since certain pestilent persons have obtained the kingdom of our fathers, it is my will then to vindicate the kingdom and to restore it just as it was before. And so I have chosen a great army and I have built ships of war. Furthermore, I intend to pass through the region so that I may take revenge on those who have corrupted our country and who have desolated many cities in my kingdom. So it's the same story. Every time there's a son of the previous king, he's like coming back for revenge and he wants to fight and he wants to, do more. It kind of reminds me of like Rehoboam. You know who Rehoboam is? Who is Rehoboam?
Or Solomon's son?
Solomon's son, right? So when Solomon, he was king of all of Israel, right? All of Israel was a united kingdom at the time of King David. And when King David died, Solomon inherited that kingdom, okay? And when Solomon died, his son Rehoboam inherited that kingdom, okay? But what happened is Rehoboam was unwise, and he wanted more for himself, and he wanted more glory for himself, and he wanted to be severe and strict and harsh with the people, like kind of to show, that he's the boss, like he's the powerful king, right? And he lost it, right? And here, every time there's this new, like infantile, immature offspring that comes after the king, instead of kind of being balanced or having like an understanding of what is reasonable or what is it he should do or trying to make peace, right? Instead, he tries to inflame war even more. He goes and tries to conquer everything even more. And a lot of times, it works for a time. But then later, he gets overthrown again. So another thing kind of we learn from this is whatever seems like it might work in the moment might have, negative repercussions and consequences later on that we have to be thinking about from now. The way that we, raise our children, for instance, okay? Like, one way of raising children is you can be very harsh, right, on the children. And from the outside, it might look like you're getting them to do what you want because you're being harsh with them. You're giving them the strict consequences. So they're always falling in line. They're always doing what you say because they're afraid of you, okay? But in the long run, it's not really producing like a good relationship. And so once they become old, they're going to dislike they're not going to respect the parents, okay? What is it that these kings are doing? They're always just wanting to inflame war. They're never bringing peace. And so even though something in the short term might work because they begin to conquer the kingdom, much later on, someone's going to come back and take revenge on them and they end up losing everything again, okay? So it says what? Now therefore I confirm to you all the oblations that all the kings before me have remitted to you, and whatever other gifts they remitted to you, and I permit you to make a striking of your own coins for your country. Okay, so what's King Antiochus doing?
Trying to get friendship of Simon.
The friendship of the Jews. Again, yes. Just like the other kings that came before them, the very first thing they would do, now that the Jews are kind of like a formidable nation, they would say, oh, they want to contact the Jews and say, the Jews, you be on my side. right? So he's telling them what are the oblations? What does the word oblation mean? We use this word in liturgy. Yeah, like the gifts, right? So he's saying what? I confirm to you all the gifts that all the kings before me have remitted to you, meaning everything else that the kings before me give you, it's like I confirm that. I want you to have those things. Like, I agree to that. And whatever other gifts they gave you. And I permit you to strike your own coins. What does that mean? What is striking your own coins?
Have your own currency.
Have your own currency, right? So again, he's giving them even more sovereignty. Right? He's making them feel like, yes, you are a sovereign nation. You are able to, have your own currency. You're able to have your own citizenship. You're having to, like, all your own worship, everything. So he's making them feel good. Okay? So this is, with the idea that Simon is going to want this king to be victorious because he's going to keep them, he's going to have peace with them. And in the past, this has happened, and they've been treacherous, and they've lied, and they've done these things. So it's like you really can't tell, when the king comes to you offering this, like, is it really true or is it not? Moreover, let Jerusalem be holy and free, and all the weapons that have been made, and the fortresses that you have constructed, or that you hold, let them remain with you. So essentially what? You can keep all of your weapons, you keep all of your army, you keep everything, because again, you're a sovereign nation. So I'm not going to tell you you have to get rid of those things. And all that is owed to the king, and what should belong to the king in the future, from this time and for all time, is remitted to you. So essentially saying, what? You don't owe me anything. I will never ask of you to give me anything, right? No taxes or tributes or anything at all. Yet when we have obtained our kingdom, right? Because King Antiochus is saying, what? I'm going to go and I'm going to get the whole kingdom back again. Okay, so there's not going to be anyone standing in front of me, not Trypho or anyone. Okay. When we obtained our kingdom, we will glorify you. So you're going to be rewarded when you help us and your nation and the temple with great glory. See, look, he understands the Jews. He understands that for them the temple is very important. So he's saying, what? Your temple is going to be glorified, right? Your temple, because of your aid to us, so much that your glory shall be manifest in all the earth. In the 174th year, Antiochus went into the land of his fathers, and all the armies came over to him, so that few were left with Trypho. So remember, Trypho had a big army, and now what? A lot of his army left and went on the side of Antiochus. Okay. And King Antiochus followed him as he fled along the sea coast and came to Dora. For he knew that evils had gathered together upon him, and that his troops had forsaken him. Okay, so Trypho's on the run.
What's Dora?
It's a location. Came to Dora on the sea coast. Not sure exactly where. And Antiochus took up a position above Dora with 120,000 men of warfare and 8,000 horsemen. And he encircled the city, and the ships drew near by sea, and they assailed the city by land and by sea, and they permitted no one to go in or out. But Numenius and those who had been with him came from the city of Rome, having letters written to the kings and the regions in which was contained these things. So remember, who is Numenius? We read about him before. He was the ambassador of the Jews. He's the ambassador that the Jews had sent to Rome to establish peace with them. Okay, so now it's saying what? This man Numenius, okay, is returning from the city of Rome, and he has letters written to the kings. Okay, this is like letters written to many, many different kings in all of the regions of that area. Okay, and so what did it say? Lucius, consul of the Romans, to King Ptolemy, greetings. Okay, who's Ptolemy? He's the leader of Egypt. Okay. The ambassadors of the Jews, our friends, came to us to renew the former friendship and alliance, having been sent from Simon, the leader of the priests and the people of the Jews. And they also brought a shield of gold of over 1,000 pounds. And so it was pleasing to us to write to the kings in the regions that they should do no harm to them, nor fight against them and their cities and their regions, and that they should bear no assistance to those fighting against them. Okay, so what is he doing here? So who is speaking? No, Numenius is the messenger who's bringing this letter. Who is the one writing it?
The leaders in Rome.
the leader of Rome. It says Lucius, the consul of Rome. Okay? And he's writing it to who?
Simon?
No.
To the king of Egypt.
So this specific letter is written to the king of Egypt, but he's going to send this exact same letter to all of the kings. Okay? And what is he telling these nations?
These guys are friends.
Yeah, the Jews are our friends, don't mess with them. Okay? Now, no one has tried to attack them as of yet, right? But all these battles that keep going back and forth, right? And now this new king, Antiochus, the son of Demetrius, he is now fighting against Trypho and like all this stuff. And so he's essentially sending this warning, saying, okay, don't touch the Jews. Okay, leave them alone. And it seemed good to us to receive the shield from them. This is the shield that the Jews gave to the Romans as a gift. If therefore those who are pestilent have taken refuge with you from their region, hand them over to Simon, the leader of the priests, so that they may give a verdict to them according to the law. What does that mean? Yeah, so what does it mean? Those who are pestilent.
Like harmful.
Yeah. Harmful to who? To the Jews. So essentially saying, if you are harboring anyone who is an enemy of the Jews in your nations, give them to the Jews as captives. Right? Extradite anyone from your nations that is an enemy of the Jew, so that the Jews can take care of them. Right? Like very powerful language saying, we don't want anyone to be against the Jews. And if you know of anyone against the Jews, then you have to turn them over to the Jews. Don't harm the Jews, and turn over all the enemies of the Jews that are taking refuge in your region. See, that one was much easier to understand. Right? That's probably why I knew what it meant, because I read this one. Okay. And so now he's saying what? All these different regions, and to all the regions, and to Lampsacus, and to the Spartans, and to Delos, and Menidos, and Sion, and Caria, and Samos, and Pamphylia, and Lycia, and Halicarnassus, and Cos, and Side, and Aradus, and Rhodes, and Phasaelis, and Gortina, and Cnidus, and Cyprus, and Cyrene. Like he's sending this everywhere. Okay. Moreover, they wrote a copy of these things to Simon, the leader of the priests, and the people of the Jews. Okay.
This place, I'm sorry, this place are part of the Roman Empire.
No,
The Greek.
these are other nations, other people that are in the region.
They're
Yeah.
independent nations.
No, I mean, a lot of them are going to be under other empires. So, for instance, they might be under the Roman Empire. They might be under the Greek Empire. Essentially, he's sending it to everyone in the whole region, saying, don't touch the Jews. Yeah. But King Antiochus positioned his camp near Dora a second time, moving his hand against it continually and making machines of war, and he enclosed Trypho, lest he escape. And Simon sent 2,000 chosen men to him as auxiliaries, and silver and gold and abundance of equipment. Okay, so what is Simon doing?
Disobeying.
Disobeying which king?
Or not the one that sent out the letter.
Rome? Well, Rome is essentially just telling everyone, don't touch the Jews. But these are the Jews. It didn't say anything. It didn't say that the Jews can't do something. So what is the Jews doing here? He sent 2,000 chosen men to him. See the word him here. Who is it referring to? It's referring to King Antiochus. Okay? So essentially, King Antiochus, he is about to crush Trypho, right? He has him cornered. He's about to crush him. Simon, whom now has peaceful relations with King Antiochus, because at the very beginning, King Antiochus came to him and he said, hey, everything is good and you have freedom and make your own money and like everything is good. So they're friends now, right? So the Jews are sending armies, auxiliaries, and money, okay, and equipment to Antiochus, essentially helping him with his battle, right? Because he's trying to destroy Trypho. So he said, okay, I'm helping you out, I'm sending this to you. But now look at what's going to happen. And he was not willing to receive them. But he broke all of the pact that he had made with him before, and he alienated himself from him. Okay? So Antiochus, the one who came to him at the beginning, he is now canceling everything. Why? Why?
Because he got Tryphon in the corner.
Right, because he doesn't need the Jews anymore. Right? Like at the beginning, he was like, oh, we need your help because of the Jews or because of Tryphon and all this. And now that he's in power, right, he's like, okay, you know, I can do what I want. What is another reason why he might be acting this way?
He wants to conquer.
Yeah, he wants to conquer, yes, but he wanted to conquer from the beginning. But specifically something that just happened that might affect his judgment.
That letter.
The letter. Why would that letter make him do this? Yeah, it's like, don't tell me what to do. Like, I'm going to attack the Jews if I want to attack the Jews. Like, it's almost like he's going to do it out of spite. Like, I am a powerful empire. You don't come, you Romans, and tell me who I can attack and who I can't attack. If I want to attack him, I'm going to attack him. And now I don't need them anymore, right? Because now Tryphon is going to be gone, and I'm going to take all of his kingdom too. And so, in the end, I'm going to be the most powerful one. And eventually, you know, in his mind, he wants to go attack the Romans and wants to take over the Romans too. Like, it's just world conquering. Everything is all about world conquering, okay? And he sent to him Athenobius, okay, one of his friends, to deal with him, saying, you hold Joppa and Gazara and the stronghold that is in Jerusalem, which are cities of my kingdom. Okay, so when it says, and he sent to him, who is he and who is him?
Antiochus to Simon.
Yes, Antiochus now is sending to Simon, his friend, whose name is Athenobius, and what is he telling him?
What do you have his mind?
Yes, give me back my cities. You know, okay, these strongholds belong to me. Right? Before he was saying, oh, you're a sovereign and you can keep everything and whatever gifts have been given. These actually were given to him, right, by previous kings. So it's not like Simon went and he took this by force. Like it was given to him and it was part of his kingdom, right? And so now he's attacking him. You have desolated their parts, and you have caused a great scourging in the land, and you have become ruler throughout many places in my kingdom. Now therefore hand over the cities that you occupy and the tributes of the place where you have become ruler beyond the borders of Judea. But if not, so one option is give me back all of this. If not, give me for them 500 talents of silver, and for the destruction that you have caused, and for the tributes of the cities another 500 talents. But if not, we will come and fight against you. Right? So he gave him an option. He said, either give me back all my cities, or give me 1,000 talents of silver, if you want to keep them. Or we will kill you. Yeah. So Athenobius, the friend of the king, came to Jerusalem and saw the glory of Simon, and his splendor in gold and silver, and his abundance of equipment, and he was astonished. And he repeated the words of the king to him. So when Athenobius came and he saw firsthand the Jewish Israel, and he saw how much had been rebuilt, and he saw how powerful they were, he himself was a little nervous. He's like, these are formidable people. Like, it's not just a simple man. Now, keep in mind, everyone has been trying to kill the Jews from the whole beginning of this book, and no one has been able to do it, right? So, like, they were very powerful. So the idea that he's threatening the Jews as though it's like, yeah, give me what I want or else I'm going to kill you, like he's taking it for granted that he has the ability to kill him, right? And now Athenobius, he's coming and saying, you know what, maybe we don't. And Simon responded to him, and he said to him, we have not taken foreign land, nor do we hold anything foreign, but we hold the inheritance of our fathers, which was for some time unjustly possessed by our enemies. He's saying, you're the ones who took our land, and then you gave it back to us as though it was a gift, right? This was originally ours. In truth, since we have the opportunity, we claim the inheritance of our fathers. Okay, so of the lands, some of the lands they're talking about, he said, no, we're not going to do anything about that. Those lands belong to us. We're not going to give them back to you, and we're not going to pay you the money for them. But, he says, and as to Joppa and Gazara, which you demand, they brought a great scourging on the people in our country. For these we will give 100 talents. And Athenobius did not respond a word to him. So Joppa and Gazara, they were originally the enemies, and they were given to him. Okay, so he said, these were not originally ours. We will give them, that's why we will be willing to pay you 100 talents for them. Okay, now keep in mind, it's not an easy thing for him to just give back the land, right? There were already Jews living there. Like, imagine going to these places and telling all the Jews, okay, you have to leave these places, or that these places were like had strongholds in them that were used by their enemies to attack them. So he said, "What we took these over because they were always being used by our enemies to try to destroy us." That's why it said they brought a great scourging on the people in our country. Right? That's why we don't want to leave them vacant, because whoever takes them is going to be very easily able to attack us and destroy us. Okay, so he kind of on his own said, "We'll give you 100 talents." You know, it's like 10 times less than what he was asking for. But returning with anger to the king, he, meaning Athenobius, reported to the king all these words, and the glory of Simon, and all that he had seen. And the king became angry with a great anger. Okay, so all of that's happening. Now, at the same time, Trypho fled by ship to Orthosia, and the king appointed Sendebius as a commander of the seacoast, and he gave him an army of foot soldiers and horsemen. Okay, so he wasn't able to stop Trypho. And he commanded him to move with his camp against the face of Judea. So he appointed this general, Sendebius? Yeah, Sendebius. Okay, he has now appointed him to go and to attack Israel. And he commanded him to build up Kedron and to barricade the gates of the city and to make war against the people. But the king pursued Trypho. So he broke up his army, right? The king was leading the group that was going to continue to try to kill Trypho because he was like the political kind of threat against him. Once he was out of the way, then there would be nothing stopping him from gaining more power. But at the same time, right, he's upset that Simon did not grant him what he wanted, so he assigned some of the people to go and to attack him. And Sendebius passed through Jamnia, and he began to provoke the populace, and to trample Judea, and to take the people captive, and to execute, and to build up Kedron. So he's now making headway into Israel. And he stationed horsemen and an army there, so that they could go out and travel through the ways of Judea as the king appointed him to do. Okay, so there's going to be now another, this is like the final battle that we're going to talk about in the Book of Maccabees. Okay. And so John came up from Gazara. Who was John? It's written in the verse.
In there.
Simon's son. Okay? Simon's son. And so John was like the leader of Gazara. He was like in charge of that area. So John came up from Gazara, and he reported to Simon his father what Sendebius had done against the people. And Simon called his two eldest sons, Judas and John, and he said to them, so remember, Judas, don't get confused again, the names thing is confusing. Judas is not the same Judas we talked about at the beginning, right? So the three sons of Matthias, are what?
Yes.
Judas, Jonathan,
and Simon.
and Simon. And Simon has two sons,
Judas
and John. Okay, and Simon called his two eldest sons, Judas and Jonathan, and he said to them, I and my brothers and my father's house have fought against the enemies of Israel from my youth, even to this day. And this work has prospered in our hands, so that we have delivered Israel several times. So essentially saying, God has been with us from the beginning, right? We have fought so many wars against all the enemies of Israel from our youth, meaning this is our entire life we've been doing this, right? And everything that we've done has prospered, because what God has delivered us every time. So he's not afraid. And now that I am old, you must act in place of me and my brothers and go out to fight for our nation. Truly, may the help of heaven be with you. Okay? So who is speaking? Simon. Simon is now essentially passing on to the next generation the leadership, right? Simon is saying, I have been fighting my whole life, and now I am old. It is now up to you to go and take over and to lead this fight and continue this fight. Okay? Telling his sons. Then he chose from the region 20,000 men of warfare and horsemen, and they started out towards Sendebius, and they rested in Modin. And they rose up in the morning and went out into the plains, and behold, an abundant army of foot soldiers and horsemen was there to meet them, and there was a river flowing between them. And he and his people moved their camp opposite their face, and he saw their trepidation of the people to cross over the river, and so he crossed over first, and seeing him, the men also crossed after him. And he divided the people and the horsemen into the midst of the foot soldiers, but the horsemen of the adversary were exceedingly numerous. And they sounded the holy trumpets. And Sendebius and his army were turned back, and many of them fell wounded, but the rest fled into the fortress. So they were able to destroy some of them, and the rest fled, and some went into the fortress. So they were fortified in there, and they could not get to them. That was one group. Then Judas, the brother of John, was wounded, but John pursued them until he came to Kedron, which he had built. And they fled all the way to the towers that were in the fields of Azotus, and he burnt them with fire, and there fell of them 2,000 men, and returned to Judea in peace. So he was able to repel this wave of attack from this general Sendebius. Now Ptolemy, the son of Ababus, this is not the same Ptolemy, it's a different Ptolemy. Now Ptolemy the son of Ababus was appointed commander over the plain of Jericho, and he held much silver and gold, for he was the son-in-law of the high priest. Who is the high priest?
Of Israel, Simon.
Simon. So this man, Ptolemy, is who?
Son-in-law.
The son-in-law of Simon, right? The son-in-law of Simon, meaning what? That he is, yes, so he is married to Simon's daughter, okay? Married to Simon's daughter. We don't know his daughter's name. It hasn't been mentioned about his daughter, but he is married, so he's very close to Simon, okay? He's in Simon's closest family, okay? Ptolemy, the son of Ababus. And his heart was exalted, and he wanted to obtain the region. And he devised treachery against Simon and his sons so as to destroy them. So that was the first time we really see like treachery and treason and infighting and trying to conquer like from the inside. Now when Simon was traveling through the cities that were in the region of Judea and acting with concern for them, he went down to Jericho, he and Matthias and Judah his sons. Again, Matthias is another name referring to, okay, he's also a son of Simon. Okay, so Simon has John, Judas, and Matthias. Matthias is also his father. Just don't get confused. Okay. So Simon was traveling through the region, okay, and he went down to Jericho with his sons, okay, Matthias and Judas, those two, okay. Which is the third son?
Matthias.
No, the third son that's not here. John. Okay, this is important. So Simon was traveling through Judea, and who was with him? Matthias and Judah, his sons. Judas, his sons. In the 177th year, in the 11th month, that is the month of Shevat. And the son of Ababus received them. Who is the son of Ababus?
Ptolemy.
Ptolemy, who is the son-in-law of Simon, okay? The son-in-law of Simon is receiving, because he's their family, right? He's like, come with me. With deceitfulness into a little fortress, which is called Dock, that he had built. And he made them a great feast, and he hid men there. And when Simon and his sons became inebriated, what is inebriated? Drunk. Ptolemy and his men rose up, and he took their weapons and entered into the gathering, and they killed them and his two sons and some of his servants, and he committed a great treachery in Israel, and he repaid good with evil. So this man, Ptolemy, betrayed his father-in-law and killed his father-in-law and his two sons. Okay, so who's left? John. John is now the only one left of the family, right? He is the only Maccabee left. He's going to be the one that's going to continue this, and even like historically after the Book of Maccabees ends, because this is the last chapter, we're not going to see the very end of everything. There's going to be more battles and more things that happen. Okay, but his name is can't remember his name. John starts with an H. I'll look it up. But essentially, like he's a well-known historical figure. Okay, and they say that he later became a Sadducee. But he is the one now that's going to carry on the torch, kind of the one who's going to lead the people the rest of the way. John. And Ptolemy wrote about these things, and he sent to the king so that he would send him an army to assist him, and he could deliver to him the region and their cities and tributes. Okay, so what is Ptolemy doing? What is he doing?
Trying to have John. I don't know who's the king. He's trying
He's
to
trying to conquer the new region.
Yes. So who's he reaching out to? Which king? Antiochus. Right? So it's like he did this like internal treachery, and now he's gonna go to Antiochus and say, hey, look what I did. I'm helping you out. I'm giving you what you want. Now make me something special, make me something important, give me like an important status. Okay? Yeah, his name is John Hyrcanus. Okay, John Hyrcanus. That's gonna be his name. If you want to read more about him. And he sent others to Gazara to destroy John, right? So this Ptolemy, son of Ababus, okay, who's related to John, who's the brother-in-law? Yeah, the brother-in-law of John. He's now sending people to destroy him. And he sent letters to the tribunes to come to him, and he would give them silver and gold and gifts. And he sent others to occupy Jerusalem and the mountain of the temple. So essentially he's like trying to take over, right? This man. You see, like in one simple act, he was able to destroy Simon and Matthias and Judas. And now he's seeking John and everything inside. Like, it kind of shows us, like, when our enemies are from within, it's much more devastating in one act to destroy all of this. Compare that to all the amount of time that these external wars were being fought and these enemies of Israel were trying to destroy them, and they were unable. But from one very, like, simple afternoon where they had their guard down and they were vulnerable, because they trusted him, they were destroyed by him, right? By this man Ptolemy. So like, when the enemies are from the inside, when there's divisions in our families or divisions in the church or divisions in any kind of group or organization that we're in, that's really the most devastating thing. Completely destroy like that organization, right? As opposed to when the enemies are from the outside, like, we can find a way to repel them, like we can find a way to defeat them. But when enemies are on the inside, it's very difficult to persevere. Now a certain one, running ahead, reported to John in Gazara that his father and his brothers perished, and that he sent to kill you also. So John was notified before anyone came to him. John was notified that this had happened. And when he heard it, he was very afraid. And he apprehended the men who came to destroy him, and he killed them, for he knew that they sought to destroy him. And the rest of the stories about John and his wars, and the virtuous deeds that he performed with fortitude, and the building of the walls that he raised, and the things that he did, behold, these have been written in the book of the days of his priesthood, from the time that he became high priest after his father. And that is all that is written here in the Bible, right? But again, if you read about him, John Hyrcanus, historically, you'll find a lot more things like known about him, because he's a real historical figure. Like, this isn't just a story where we don't know who these people are in history. But essentially, there was more wars, and he continued to fight against them until finally, later on, when the Romans came to power, the Romans became the ones that kind of were like Israel became under their rule. Okay, so even though Israel kind of maintained its freedom of religion and it's maintained some level of sovereignty, but it wasn't completely free. And these Romans, who at the time was the Republic of Rome, it wasn't yet the Roman Empire. When it became the Roman Empire, that's when they began to also grow and expand, just like the Greeks did, and want power for themselves. And the emperor became all, totalitarian and everything. And so all of the nice things about the Roman Republic that we see now kind of is no more at that point.
So Second Maccabees doesn't continue the story?
No, Second Maccabees is just a retelling of the same story from a different perspective. Yeah. And it doesn't, like, there are some areas where it goes into more detail, but it's not as, like, I would say it's more detailed in some things, but it's not as expansive. Like, it doesn't tell the whole story from beginning to end. Yeah. You have a question?
Yeah. How do you spell Arcanus? Is it A-R-C-H?
Hyrcanus.
One more time, please.
Hyrcanus.
Oh, that's what I'm
So let's refresh my memory here. So in the previous chapter, so in your mind, in other words, in your honest opinion, do you think God would have been happy if he had to kill those people? Like in other words, you said earlier that earlier you said that according to the letter that they sent, he told them don't tell me he told them don't tell me what to do if I wanna kill these people. Maybe it'll be maybe it's a good thing for me to do. So
You're talking about when Antiochus did that?
yeah, so in other words, do you think God would have been happy if he killed those people?
No, because Antiochus is going to be killing the Jews, right? So Antiochus, when he gained enough power that he didn't need the Jews anymore. So at the beginning, he was like friendly with the Jews, right? Because he felt that he needed the Jews.
Yeah.
And so, but once he reached the point where he didn't feel threatened anymore and he didn't need the Jews anymore, he turned on them and wanted to kill them. So that's what we're talking about. It's essentially now Antiochus is warring against the Jews, even though he promised them all of this at the beginning. And now that he doesn't need them, he kind of reneged all of that and he's going to attack them now.
Okay.
So no, God was not happy with that.
Okay, so let me ask you that. So why do you need the Jews? Well, why do you need the Jews at the beginning to begin with? It's because they needed their help, or because
they needed their help. So when King Antiochus, remember his father Demetrius had now been captured in Persia. Okay, so he's now kind of the one who's in charge, right?
Yes,
So the first thing he wants to do is he wants to consolidate more power for himself, and so he decides to go after Trypho. Okay, so because he feels he needs support, he goes to the Jews, he tells them, hey, let's have a good relationship, blah, 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 so that when he asks for help, or when he didn't actually technically ask for help, they sent him help, okay, but that he would have the support of the Jews, and they definitely would not try to ally with their enemies, right? So let's say Trypho decided he wanted to make allies with the Jews. The Antiochus would have done it already, so there would have been no time for that to happen. And this has happened before. Every time some new person comes to power, they race to see who can be kind of friends with the Jews first, because they're afraid the Jews are going to join the other side. Yeah.
so okay, so I can so in other words, I can say that originally he thought he needed the Jews' help, but then at the end, but then at the end he realized, okay, maybe I don't need the Jews anymore. Maybe I'm just kidding. Maybe I don't need the Jews to.
Yeah, he was lying to them from the beginning. He was saying all of that in deceit, just so that he would have a good relationship with them, and then in the end, when he doesn't need them, he's gonna.
And one more question, if you don't mind. So before he ended up killing them, why didn't the Jews react to this? In other words, I'm asking you, like, why didn't the Jews ask him? Okay, so why are they gonna kill us if you didn't need us to begin with?
Well, I mean, it takes time for a reaction, right? Like imagine that we're sitting here and then all of a sudden there's a mob of people that came from the outside and like tried to attack us, right? We didn't know that this was happening. Like we didn't know it was coming. But when they knew that it was coming, when they realized it, they retaliated, right? So they weren't expecting such an attack to happen or when it was going to happen and so on. So that's why at the very beginning you'll find like the first attack was successful. Like they were able to come in and start attacking Israel. But then when they mobilized their army, they were able to push them back and so on. Okay.
I think it was the page before that, when it says he found out the news. Yeah, he was very afraid. So that verse, so he heard that they were going to kill him and he was very afraid. But then he ended up killing the people that were going to come kill him. So how does he go from being afraid to being able to just fight off everyone in one verse? It seems like he was very courageous instead of very afraid.
Well, when it says he apprehended the men, it doesn't mean that he personally did so, right? Like it means that he had his people capture these people who are going to come and kill him. So he was afraid because he just heard that his father and his two brothers had just been murdered by his own brother-in-law, right? So he was shaken by that. But But when the messenger came and told him that, and he knew that someone was coming for him, essentially, like, he has his people to protect him, because I mean, he's essentially now the leader, right? And he was already a leader from before. He just wasn't the leader of the whole nation, but he was a leader of an area. So he had his own soldiers, he had everyone. So he's going to have his people to protect him, as long as they are aware that they're going to come for him. Yeah. Good. Any other?
Just family, wealth, friends, and property make a lot of beauty. That's all I noticed from this chapter.
Yes, there is a lot of that, and really, like the thirst for power, right? Like the lust for power and property is all throughout this. I mean, the whole conflict from the beginning. It's like, well, we want more land, we want more property. The Seleucid Empire, we just want to go and kill these people. We want to transform their life. We want them to be like us. We want to Hellenize them. So all of this, I mean, all this death and bloodshed and everything was all about power. Who's the one who's going to get power? And the Maccabees, Israel, up until this chapter, they were the only ones that didn't want any power, right? And then when you see the first time that somebody from among Israel here who really was in a powerful position to make a difference, that sought power for himself, and he used that for his, to his advantage. Yeah.
So, how far is this from Egypt? Like, how far? Is it a couple of centuries, a couple of years down the road from Exodus?
Oh, it's very, yeah. I mean, it's like over 1,000 years, more than that.
1300?
Something,
200 BC?
yeah. So something like that, yeah.